On the fateful evening of March 8, 1982, Susanna Flores Brown graced a Tupperware gathering in the vicinity of their residence in Abilene, Texas. Meanwhile, her daughter, Francesca Antoinette Martinez, sought the comfort of their neighbor Kathy's home, requesting a sleepover. Kathy, embodying the wisdom of a mother, gently declined, reminding Francesca that it was a school night, suggesting they could plan for a weekend adventure instead. After retrieving Francesca around 8:30 p.m., Susanna returned home, blissfully unaware of the impending tragedy. The following morning, as the clock approached 3:20 a.m., Billy Brown returned from work, stepping into a darkness that concealed unspeakable horrors. Upon flicking on the light, he was met with a chilling sight: blood and the lifeless form of his wife, Susanna, partially obscured beneath the bed. In a state of shock, he bypassed the living room phone, hastening to the kitchen to summon help. Upon arrival, law enforcement made a grim discovery, uncovering the bodies of his 8-year-old stepdaughter Francesca and Antoinette Martinez within the home. The scene was unsettling, yet investigators noted peculiarities. Susanna lay face up in her bedroom, a lamp cord still tethered to the lamp, cruelly wrapped around her neck. Francesca, too, had fallen victim to ligature strangulation, found in her room with a phone cord severed in 2 places around her neck. The ligatures employed in the tragic demise of both Susanna and Francesca were commonplace items from within the home, suggesting a crime of opportunity rather than a meticulously planned act. Strangulation, a deeply personal and visceral method of taking a life, hinted at an intimate knowledge of the victims by the perpetrator. The medical examiner later revealed the presence of male DNA fluid in Susanna's mouth, though it appeared to have been rinsed away, leaving open the possibility of consensual contact, thus complicating its connection to the crime. Additionally, 3 significant lacerations adorned Susanna's head, indicating that the assailant had struck her thrice with the lamp before the fatal act. Her white V-neck t-shirt and bra bore signs of struggle, further underscoring the brutality of that night. Her azure shorts lay discarded around her ankles, yet there was no indication of foul play. It was discovered that young Francesca had been concealed beneath the bed. The positioning of her body suggested that an assailant had located and forcibly removed her. Intriguingly, Billy informed the authorities that the back door was ajar and a window was opened a mere 5 to 6 inches. This scene appeared contrived, as all the screen doors remained intact and securely closed. Officers found no evidence of forced entry, no marks on the door, and nothing was reported missing from the residence. Despite the gravity of the situation, Billy maintained an unsettling composure, displaying a calm demeanor and even resorting to inappropriate humor. This shift in behavior transformed him from a grieving relative into the prime suspect. Investigators sought to delve deeper into the backgrounds of Susanna Flores Brown's parents, Nick Flores and Francis Soda. Susanna, a quintessential Texan, was born on October 20th, 1951, in Taylor County, Texas. She had 2 sisters, a half-sister and a half-brother, and was cherished by all who knew her. At the tender age of 16, she fell for a man a decade her senior, the 26-year-old Freddie Martinez. They wed in 1967 and enjoyed a long, blissful marriage. Freddie served as a lance corporal in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War, returning home in 1973 as the conflict came to a close. That year proved to be pivotal. In January, as the Paris Peace Accords were signed and troops were withdrawn, Freddie faced the loss of his father. However, by year's end, joy returned to his life with the birth of his daughter, Francesca Antoinette Martinez, on December 11th. 1973. Affectionately nicknamed Cha-Cha for her vivacious spirit, she attended Bonham Elementary School in Abilene. The bond between mother and daughter was filled with love and happiness, but, as is often the case with youthful unions, their marriage ultimately faltered. The couple parted ways, with Susanna retaining custody of Francesca. Immersed in the joys of motherhood, Susanna devoted herself to her daughter, who had a passion for dance and an enthusiasm for various activities. Their life together flourished in solitude until 1979, when Billy Brown entered the scene. One fateful evening at a nightclub, she encountered a charming man who captured her heart. Billy, employed at New Corp, presented himself as a devoted family man. However, Susanna's sisters quickly perceived a shift in the relationship's dynamics. They observed his flirtatious nature and womanizing tendencies, leading Linda and Rita Flores to suspect infidelity. Despite Susanna's attempts to defend him, attributing her sister's concerns to prejudice, their disapproval remained steadfast. One night, while out with their father at a nightclub, Linda witnessed a heated argument between the couple, culminating in Billy violently pushing Susanna to the ground. Their relationship had spanned approximately 3 years, during which Susanna's family characterized Billy as controlling and abusive. Her siblings expressed grave concerns for her safety in light of his behavior. Richard Flores, Susanna's half-brother, arrived at the scene of the tragic incident after hearing of the double homicide. He noted Billy's complete lack of remorse as he laughed and joked about a bottle of whiskey Richard had left behind a week prior. For Richard, Billy's emotional detachment was a glaring warning sign. Rowan Flores, Susanna's half-sister, recalled Susanna's hesitance regarding intimacy with Billy, who would become irritable and make snide comments if his expectations were not met. The revelation of Susanna's desire to exit the relationship, combined with Billy's alleged fury over intimacy issues, provided investigators with a potential motive. Billy informed the police that he had been attempting to reach Susanna for some time before finally succeeding. Investigators began to construct a narrative of the events that may have transpired. When Susanna failed to answer her phone, a tempest of insecurity, jealousy, and a desire for control engulfed him, igniting a dispute that rapidly escalated into a more grave situation. Sarah, Susanna's devoted cousin, recounted to investigators that during the summer of 1981, she accompanied Susanna to the hospital. It was there that Susanna purportedly revealed a confrontation with Billy Brown, which resulted in her experiencing a miscarriage. The officers were convinced that physical abuse marred their relationship. Tensions frequently flared, and it came to light that Susanna had once summoned the police in November 1981, fearing for her safety in the presence of Billy. During this incident, he dismissed the matter with a laugh, claiming that Susanna had retaliated by sabotaging his car's gas tank. However, realizing the gravity of the situation and the potential consequences, she reached out to the authorities, apprehensive about Billy's reaction. Susanna confided in her family her reluctance to marry Billy or reside in Texas, largely due to the implications of common-law marriage. Although they were not legally wed in Texas, their cohabitation and intent to marry positioned her as his common-law wife, a status she seemed to reject. Court documents reveal that she only acquiesced to adopting his surname shortly before her tragic demise, a decision made under duress just weeks prior. A week before the fateful incident, Susanna sought financial assistance from her mother to change the locks on their home and inquired with her siblings about acquiring a firearm. Richard Flores disclosed that he possessed knowledge unknown to others. Susanna was attempting to extricate herself from Billy, who was deeply agitated by her intentions and had issued threats against her. She confided in Richard, sharing her plight and requesting his help in purchasing a gun, as if she had an ominous premonition of the fate that awaited her. As investigators focused their scrutiny on Billy, he presented an alibi to support his claims. He stated that he departed for his position at the New Corp manufacturing facility at approximately 4:30 p.m. on March 8th. He clocked in at 5 p.m. and clocked out at 3 a.m. the next day. Investigators spoke with his alibi, Josie Leros, who is also an employee at New Corp. Rumors were suggesting that Billy Brown was involved in an affair with Josie, which raised questions about his fidelity to Susanna. Josie was forthcoming and acknowledged that it would be relatively easy for Billy to leave work unnoticed, given the nature of his job. Other colleagues, including James Coffey and Larry Skiles, corroborated this possibility, which further weakened Billy's alibi. In 1982, Billy could not be convicted due to insufficient evidence. Unbeknownst to the officers, they did have evidence. It simply required DNA analysis. The case remained unsolved until 2012, when the Abilene police requested Billy to come in for questioning. He failed to appear and refused to provide a DNA sample. A decade later, on January 17, 2023, a DNA test from Susanna's oral swab was conducted, confirming Billy's involvement. Investigators sought to interview him and approached him outside his residence, but he appeared unfazed. During a 2-hour police interview, he denied all accusations and professed his love for his wife, rejecting any claims of domestic violence. He also refuted allegations of a miscarriage, asserting that Susanna had chosen to have an abortion in 1981. When he declined to provide a DNA sample, a warrant was issued and the sample was obtained forcibly. Reports indicated that Billy remarked, "I have signed my ending." He argued that, given the 30-minute break at work, he couldn't drive to their Abilene home and back to commit the crime, as the journey took 18 minutes each way. He vehemently denied any relations with Susanna, claiming he did not find that particular act enjoyable. He was unaware that the officers had conducted a DNA analysis, which ultimately revealed his bodily fluid in Susanna's mouth. Despite the circumstances, he vehemently denied any involvement with Susanna. He suggested that it was plausible Susanna was involved with her former partner, attempting to divert the authorities' attention. He recounted a mundane evening of enjoying fried chicken with his family before departing for work. When questioned by the officers about why he hadn't used the living room phone to call for help, he swiftly countered, "Did Francesca not have a phone cord around her neck?" There was no doubt the true culprit was Billy. The officers began to piece together the narrative. Billy had meticulously orchestrated the entire affair, sneaking away from work to take Susanna's life, followed by the murder of Francesca, ensuring no witnesses remained. On October 27, 2023, just 2 days after conversing with Susanna's sisters, law enforcement apprehended Billy Brown on charges of homicide, yet he was released the following day on a $200,000 bond. Billy expressed his belief that Susanna was unfaithful to her ex, claiming that was his sole concern. Years later, when reporters sought his comments, Billy merely chuckled dismissively. Susanna's sister spoke with tears in her eyes. "I didn't dare to hope, as so much time has passed, and I thought there was no way they could resolve this. It has been 41 years. To receive this news is simply surreal. It feels like a dream." On the early morning of July 17, 2007, at approximately 1:20 a.m., a harrowing 911 call was placed to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. The caller, a landlord, reported a tragic confrontation that had resulted in a fatality involving a tenant. Swiftly, deputies from the sheriff's office proceeded to the scene of the incident. Upon their arrival at Nature's Trail Mobile Home Park, situated off Morse Bridge Road in Thonotosassa, Florida, they were met with a scene of utter devastation. The landlord, identified as Jonathan Burns, a 43-year-old co-owner and resident of the park, recounted to the deputies the same narrative he had shared with the 911 operator. A violent altercation with a female tenant that he claimed was an act of self-defense. He asserted that the tenant had initiated the attack, presenting the deputies with 2 stab wounds on his abdomen as evidence. Leading them to the site of the tragedy, outside the trailer of the tenant, Tonya Ann Ottman. They discovered her lifeless form, sprawled on her back and drenched in blood. She bore 4 stab wounds to her chest and a significant laceration across her neck. Nearby, a blood trail was located, leading to a dumpster approximately 29 feet from the deceased. Following this trail, the deputies traced it back to Burns's trailer. Inside, they uncovered the murder weapon, a knife still stained with the victim's blood. While Toynia's remains were transported to the medical examiner for an autopsy, Burns was taken to Tampa General Hospital for treatment of his injuries. Medical professionals informed him that his knife wounds would necessitate surgical intervention. Additionally, they noted that his arms were marked with scratches, consistent with someone defending themselves against an assailant. The autopsy of Toynia yielded little new information for the detectives, aside from the confirmation that her demise was indeed caused by the stab wounds to her chest, which had tragically penetrated both her lungs and heart. According to Burns's account, the case appeared to be a straightforward instance of self-defense. Yet, certain discrepancies between his statements and the evidence collected raised eyebrows. The blood found on the murder weapon and at the crime scene matched Burns's DNA profile, but intriguingly, his blood was absent from the vicinity of Toynia's body, while her blood was not located near the dumpster. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Toynia often relied on a walker or wheelchair due to a disability that severely limited her mobility, casting doubt on her ability to launch an attack with the intent to inflict serious harm. In 2007, the investigators were inclined to charge Burns with murder, harboring deep skepticism regarding his self-defense narrative. However, the state attorney's office ultimately determined that the evidence was insufficient to challenge Burns's account, leading to the case being set aside and growing cold for 14 years. In 2021, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit took a renewed interest in the matter, seeking fresh insights. After meticulously re-examining the circumstantial and physical evidence, a detective visited Burns's residence on January 14, 2022, to gather his recollections of the tragic events surrounding Toynia's stabbing. When recounting that fateful night, Burns reiterated the same details he had previously provided. He recounted a night of heavy drinking when he was suddenly met with Toynia's piercing screams, seemingly without any provocation from him. Initially, he had merely intended to close the laundry room door, but an urge to confront her soon took hold. As he approached her trailer, he claimed that Toynia delivered a fierce blow to his stomach. In that instant, he felt disoriented, but it wasn't long before he noticed the blood and succumbed to panic. Intriguingly, he insisted that Toynia was unarmed, lacking any knife or weapon, yet somehow she had managed to inflict a stab wound. The detectives, noting the inconsistencies in his account, grew increasingly skeptical of Burns' honesty. Just as they began strategizing to fortify their case, fortune smiled upon them. A week later, an anonymous witness reached out to the sheriff's office, revealing she possessed information regarding a cold case from 2007. During her police interview, she disclosed that on the day of the murder 14 years earlier, Burns had approached her shortly after the detective's visit. He confessed to her that he was aware of his wrongdoing and expressed a desire to confront his actions. The witness further noted that Burns acknowledged Toynia's disability at the time of her death. To substantiate her claims, she presented a signed letter from Burns detailing the incident, which she submitted to the detectives. Merely 2 days later, the witness contacted the police once more, stating that Burns had sought her out again, asserting that he had penned the letter to demonstrate he was acting in self-defense. He expressed hope that this would shield him from the repercussions of a first-degree murder charge. The witness disclosed that he expressed no remorse for his actions, asserting that Toynia received her just deserts, a clear indication of his animosity towards her. A few days later, on January 28, 2022, The witness reached out to the detectives once more, revealing that Burns had provided her with another signed letter, which contradicted the initial one he had submitted. Discrepancies also emerged between this new letter and his verbal accounts of the incident. In February 2022, the witness contacted the detectives again, informing them that Burns had issued yet another statement after she confronted him regarding the inconsistencies between his previous letters and spoken narratives. During this confrontation, she mentioned that her son was present, and together they inquired of Burns how he had sustained his stab wounds 14 years prior. This time, Burns divulged the complete truth. He confessed to the witness and her son that, on the day of the murder, he had spotted Toinia while en route to the laundry room. He returned home to retrieve his knife, intending to inflict serious harm upon her. As he approached her to engage in conversation, an argument ensued, escalating into a struggle over the knife. When Toinia attempted to leave, he stabbed her multiple times and subsequently slashed her throat. To fabricate a self-defense narrative, he then inflicted 2 stab wounds upon himself. Burns later provided the witness with a third written statement, claiming it contained the unvarnished truth. This final letter concluded with his admission of hatred towards Toinia and his premeditated intent to harm her that fateful night, resulting in her death. The details within this third statement aligned with the evidence gathered at the crime scene, and investigators were able to match a latent fingerprint found on one of the statements to Burns. This accumulation of evidence ultimately sufficed to build a case against him, leading to his arrest for murder. In a declaration made following his apprehension, Burns expressed, "This is a profound tragedy for which I bear responsibility. I long to alter the course of events." Regardless of the authenticity of his contrition, on February 3, 2022, law enforcement officials detained him and formally charged him with the murder of Toinia. A haunting enigma that has lingered over Canyon Lake, Texas, for more than 30 years has finally come to light. In 1986, the lifeless form of Charles Robert Harden was unearthed at a secluded campsite, bound and devoid of life, a riddle that confounded investigators for an extended period. Although the inquiry began with promise, it soon grew cold until a significant breakthrough reignited the pursuit of justice. 2 individuals, connected to the crime yet residing miles apart, now face charges for a brutal act that appeared fated to remain unresolved. Who were these men, and what ultimately led to their reckoning after all these years? In that fateful year of 1986, a gruesome murder cast a pall over Canyon Lake, a favored destination for camping and recreation. On August 26th, the lifeless body of 56-year-old Charles Robert Harden was discovered at Jacobs Creek Park, a picturesque locale on the eastern shore of the lake. Originally hailing from Houston, Charles had been enjoying his stay at the park when fellow campers stumbled upon his remains. He was found bound with strips of bed sheets encircling his neck, hands, and feet, a grim indication that his demise was no mere accident. An autopsy revealed the investigators' worst fears. His life had been extinguished by asphyxiation, and his body had begun to decompose for approximately 6 to 7 days before its discovery. At the time, Comal County Sheriff's Office investigators Rudy Rubio and Dennis Kay embarked on a meticulous investigation. The case bore all the signs of a calculated and violent murder. Yet, despite numerous leads, the investigation eventually stagnated. A composite sketch of a suspect, described as a Latin male in his mid-30s, was disseminated, and local authorities sought information regarding a blue 1980s Chevrolet Celebrity sedan that had been seen near the campsite the day before Charles's body was found. The public was also engaged through Crime Stoppers, which offered a reward for information. However, as time passed, leads dwindled, and the investigation fell into silence. For years, the tragic fate of Charles Robert Harden appeared destined to remain a mystery. In the annals of mysteries, the tragic tale of Charles Robert Harden stands out, a haunting reminder of a brutal crime that transpired in 1986. On a fateful day, August 26th, the serene beauty of Canyon Lake was shattered when the body of the 56-year-old Houston native was discovered at the picturesque Jacobs Creek Park. Fellow campers stumbled upon the lifeless form of Charles, bound with strips of bed sheets, a grim indication that his demise was anything but accidental. An autopsy revealed the chilling truth. He had succumbed to asphyxiation, and his body had begun to decompose for nearly a week before its discovery. At the time, investigators Rudy Rubio and Dennis Kopp of the Comal County Sheriff's Office embarked on an exhaustive inquiry, uncovering the unmistakable signs of a calculated murder. Despite the emergence of several leads, the case soon grew cold. A composite sketch of a suspect, described as a Latin male in his mid-30s, was disseminated, and local authorities sought information regarding a blue 1980s Chevrolet Celebrity sedan seen near the campsite the day before the grim discovery. Crime Stoppers joined the effort, offering a reward to entice potential informants, yet the trail went cold, leaving the case shrouded in mystery for years. However, in a remarkable turn of events in 2021, Texas Ranger Joshua Ray took it upon himself to revisit this chilling cold case. He resubmitted previously collected evidence to the Texas Department of Public Safety's Crime Laboratory in Austin, banking on advancements in forensic science to unveil new insights. This renewed investigation proved pivotal, as lab results ultimately identified two prime suspects: 56-year-old Tracy Keith Loy and 57-year-old Mark Gatton. Two men residing in disparate regions of the nation were in their 20s at the time of the heinous crime. Loy was situated in St. George, Utah, while Gatton was located in Quaker City, Ohio. The nature of their connection to Charles and the underlying motive for his tragic demise remain shrouded in mystery. Yet their involvement in the case is irrefutable. In May 2023, following extensive interviews with both individuals, law enforcement officials executed their arrests. Loy was subsequently extradited to Texas and processed into the Comal County Jail, where he faced an $80,000 bond. Gatton was apprehended shortly before, awaiting his extradition to Texas. The capture of these two men has reignited inquiries into the dynamics of their relationship with Charles, raising questions about whether their actions stemmed from personal vendettas, robbery, or other motives entirely. For many in the Canyon Lake community, the loss of Charles was a distant sorrow. Yet, the recent developments have thrust this haunting case back into the limelight. On October 13, 2023, Mark Gatton received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Subsequently, on February 9, 2024, Tracy Keith Loy was sentenced to 60 years in prison after entering a guilty plea. For nearly 28 years, the murder of Charles Robert Harden appeared destined to slip into the annals of forgotten tragedies.